right, exciting stuff. It's Moog time. Oh shit. I'm so excited about this. This Moog thing. Oh man, this took so much work. Oh my god. I actually was like contemplating just like giving up a few times making this because it took so long and it was so labor intensive. But these sounds, man, are so awesome. These are my favorite patches I've ever made. I'm gonna use these in every song I make for the rest of my life. These patches are just awesome. So I made this massive bundle of Moog Sounds. They're all dialed in and they're ready for Ableton and they're just awesome. So okay, so why the big deal about Moog Sounds? All right, well, if you've taken math class, you know that a sine wave is a mathematical equation, and a saw wave is a mathematical equation, and a square wave is a mathematical equation. So I thought that based on my experience with math class, that a sine wave was mathematically a sine wave, no matter whether it came from a hardware synthesizer or a software synthesizer. If it's a sine wave, it's math, and therefore all sine waves are the same. I was so wrong. I was so wrong when I thought this, okay? A sine wave is not a sine wave when it comes to audio synthesis. They're all generated in different ways. They all have their own kind of strengths and their own individual character. Same thing with saw waves. They're not all the same at all. They're all totally different from each other. And when you get the chance, like my whole world got turned upside down about 3-4 years ago when I had a student who was like this crazy marketing millionaire dude, and he had this studio with like probably like $1 million worth of audio equipment in it, and he didn't have time to learn it all, so he hired me to basically spend a couple weeks in this studio, this like dream analog studio with everything, and learn how to use it all and show him how it all works. So I was in there with like all the real stuff that all the UAD plugins are based on. All these, like, he had a wall-sized Moog modular synth. It was crazy, like with the 1/4-inch jacks and stuff. Like if it fell over, it could have probably fatally crushed me. Like it's that big. So anyway, I'm in this room with all these synthesizers for weeks on end, just like going deep. And I learned that every synth is totally, they have their own individual personality. And I was able to do a comparison of like, you know, an MFB Dominion and, you know, different modular oscillators and all these different things. And I gotta say, the oscillator sound that I like the most is the Moog. Moog analog oscillators, they have this sound that it's hard to explain, but you know they're basically the Moog, like they're one of the very first synthesizer companies. They're based out of Ashland in Ashland, South Carolina, and it's a legacy, man. They're a really really cool company. It's all like employee owned, and they've been they made some of the first synthesizers ever. Pioneered the East Coast synth sound. If you've ever listened to like P-Funk or Dr. Dre or like James Brown or whatever, you've heard Moog synthesizers. They have that just like that classic analog synth sound that you've heard on like every record is from a Moog. And you may have noticed that it is kind of like digital filters. You know, it's really immediately apparent that digital filters don't sound the same. But digital oscillators definitely don't sound the same as analog oscillators. But the problem is Moog synths are expensive. They're kind of hard to use. It's really time consuming to, you know, make a patch and play in all the MIDI and like sample it and all this stuff. And sometimes, in fact almost all the time, you want the sound of the Moog synthesizer with the ease of use and flexibility of the digital world. So I decided that although it was cool owning a Moog and using a Moog, I wanted to have my cake and eat it too. I wanted all the advantages of digital and all of the advantages of analog. So I sat down and embarked on this project to sample all of the patches from my Moog ill.Phatty, to sample, like you can see I did 26 samples per patch, going all the way up the keyboard so that no sound is bent more than a couple semitones out of the range that it's in. And I used my MPC to sample these, and I cut them up and like meticulously multi-sampled them so they all loop and you can hold the notes and everything's in tune, because analog synths, they have all kinds of tuning drifts, so you have to tune them every time. So I cut them up and I tuned them and I split them and I put them into the sampler, normalized them and all this stuff. You may have seen me doing it on the live stream. It was like crazy. It took so long. And now it's all said and done. It's all ready. And I made 149 of these things. 149 multi-sampled Moog patches. 149 of them. They're all organized. They're all ready. They're all ready to go. And I'm just going to, I'm going to be using these for the rest of my life, because analog synths never go out of style. They're timeless, you know. And you can use these patches straight up. Like, they sound good right out of the box if you're going for that like raw kind of analog sound. But they also sound really excellent if you start processing them. And you may have noticed, like, when you have a digital synth, like especially digital saw waves or digital square waves, when you start to like process them hard and like EQ and compress and saturate, all the texture of the oscillator comes to the forefront when you squash it and compress it and saturate it. And you may have noticed that if you have a digital synth and there's something kind of grating or harsh about the synth, it becomes more harsh when you apply compression and saturation and everything. Well, with analog synths, the same is true, but because the texture is good, when you apply processing, the real richness of the tone starts to come out. And so these are all kind of like, all these sounds are, you know, they're good as is, because analog synths, like, they don't have a sweet spot. They sound good the whole range. So all these sounds are good as is, and they sound good as is, but once you use them more, they sound really, really good. So I'm going to show you now just some of my favorite patches in here. I'm gonna have to start with the sub, okay? Because the subs, that's one thing that just like, there's no substitute for a Moog. So these subs are just so juicy. That's the sub I use for every one of my tracks, is the sine wave from a Moog. It's just, it sounds so much better. And if you do like a shootout, you know, between a real analog synth and like the Ableton analog synth, right here, I'll make a sine wave in analog and I'll make a sine wave in the Moog. Let's get the levels kind of more or less matched. I think it was up around -12. Let's take the velocity off. Like, it's just, like, it just sounds so lifeless compared to the, but yeah, even the analog, Ableton analog is like, it's a very, you know, well done model. But if you have a sub, you can hear that the Moog, it just like, it cuts through more. It just seems to move more air somehow. I don't know the exact science behind it. I'm sure if like a Moog engineer was here, they'd be like, oh, well, it's because of this. I don't know why, but you can feel it and you can tell. So there's a ton of different subs. There's this sub with some more attack. So it's like more of an 808 style sub. This one's got some FM. Right, here's some more. This one. Right, so there's a bunch of these. I could go through all these different basses, but I'm gonna show you some of these Reeses are fucking just insane. That just sounds awesome. Check out this Reese. I'm gonna use this Reese all. Like, Like, holy shit. How about this one? Like, what? Eat your heart out noise, yeah? Yeah, then this one, so, like, some of the patches are from the Moog library, but some of them I made myself. This is one of mine. Oh, wait. Hang on, where is the sync? Oh yeah, this one's right. Yeah, so I souped some of them up. Like I used frequency modulation, oscillator spreading, and other stuff that you can only do with the digital synth. So I did that with these. Yeah, because the Moog doesn't have a pitch envelope that's easily accessible. So I used some of these digital features to kind of beef up the Moog and like. But yeah, they're really fucking nice. Yeah, like what? And these are just sampler patches. There's no effects, there's no EQ, there's nothing. It's just the sampler. Yeah, I made a bunch of different kinds of subs and everything. So anyway, there's a big bass package with just tons and tons of basses. And then, you know, you can have all the raw patches too. So like here, this is a Reese, just the normal. Reese is, where are we? Oh god, there's so many, it's like hard to keep track of them. Yeah, so this is the normal Reese. So even without processing, it sounds awesome. Then there's all these fifth patches. And then that's just the saw wave, by the way. Like these sounds are so good, man. Like this, a digital synth just does not sound like. Like it's just a saw wave, but it sounds fucking awesome. Yeah, so there's tons and tons of basses. There's all these kinds of like mono synths. Like this is a kind of classic sound that you hear in like Dr. P or like Rusko or whatever. It's like. You know, very classic kind of dubstep sound. Then there's a lot of these like weird kind of nasally ones. You know, really kind of EEPROM-y, gurgle sounding stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of those, and then there's these poly patches, and the poly patches, because like the big thing with the Moog 1, right? The Moog 1 is the new Moog synth, which is like $8,000, insane Moog synth. And the reason why it's such a big deal is that it's polyphonic, right? So poly meaning more than one, phonic meaning voice. So let's say you're writing for a choir, right? Because like most analog synths, they only have one voice, right? Because you need to have a separate set of chips for the oscillators and the filters and the LFOs. So they only have one voice, so you can't play chords. Because think about like writing for a choir. Let's say you're writing a chord for a choir. One person can't sing a chord. You need to have 3 people minimum to be able to sing a chord, because they each have to hold their own note, because each person can only sing one note at a time typically, right? So Moog has not released very many polyphonic Moog synths. The last time they released one was 30 years ago. So this Moog 1 that just came out, it's the first polyphonic Moog synth that they've released in 30 years. So that's what makes it worth $8,000, is it has 16 voices. So there's 16 copies of the oscillator circuit. There's 16 copies of the filter circuit. There's 16 copies of the LFO circuit. There's 16 copies of the envelope circuit. Like the thing is just full of chips. Like it weighs like 50 pounds or something. Like it's crazy, right? But the good news for us is that when we're in a digital synth, I can just turn the voices here. Like, you want 20 voices? Boom. Now we got 20 voices. Right? So you can make like a fake Moog 1 and you get some of those like $8,000 Moog sounds just with the sampler. So check this out, like. gorgeous sounds. Or like check out this super saw that I made. I went in and like I layered up all the saws in here, but this is yeah, check it out. So this is a basic super saw. Oh wait, no, it's not the right one. Ill.Phatty basic super saw. Oh wait, it's clipping a little. I'll bring that volume down. Like really, really juicy, and you can just like if you want more voices, you can just crank it up. Right, and then I made different versions. More and more voices. So that's like 3 voices per voice, and then this one's 5. Yeah, you're just not gonna get anything that sounds like that out of a soft synth. But yeah, so it took for goddamn ever, like so long. But yeah, so there's the raw versions that sound just like they're out of the Moog, and then there's the new versions that I made. All these expanded capabilities, and you know, it's pretty much like all the analog synth sounds you're ever going to really need. There's 149 of these patches. And then I switched up the way it is for the library now too, because before, you know, on the old studio templates and stuff, I would ask people to just save these patches individually to their library, and it takes a long time to save 149 of them. So I was figuring out ways to refine the system. The new system is basically that you just add the folder that they're in to places, and then I made it so that you can go into, like, let's say the basses, you can go in here, and then all these patches, they reference samples that are inside this folder, inside the project folder, and if you just add that to places, you can load them in right from the browser, and all the sample files are going to work and everything, and then you can just save your favorites to your library, so you won't fill up your library, because it's a big library. Like 149 of these multi-samples is, I don't know, it's like a couple gigs, you know, so it's a pretty big library, but I'm certainly going to enjoy using it for the rest of my music career. Like these are just great. And in a lot of ways, it's like there are pretty big advantages over a hardware synth to have these like this. So it comes in 3 bundles. There's the mono bundle, which is all the mono synths. There's the poly bundle, which is all the ones that sound good with like chords or plucks. And then there's the bass bundle, which has all the basses. And they're all broken out into separate patches. There's the original raw Moog patches, and then there's my improved versions for a lot of them. And yeah, I mean, the sound is crazy. And then I'll just show you, I made this track that with a lot of these sounds, and pretty much all the sounds are from the Moog. And I just want you to listen for like the openness and the richness of the sound, because this is, it's one of my favorite things I've ever made. And it was these sounds, like actually making this library, the sounds were so inspiring to work with that inspired me to do one of my best tracks, I feel, you know. And Moog Sounds, man, they're timeless sounds, you know, like analog synths will never go out of style. There's something just so mathematical about it that, you know, it's like a sine wave, a square wave, a saw wave, you know, they're like the best things. Like it's, you know, it's like being the best at weird shit. Like you can invent something weird, like, and become the best at it just because not everybody's trying to do that thing. But being the best at like running is really impressive, you know. And it's always important when you're a producer to be like on the hunt for basic sounds too, you know, because we get all carried away with like, you know, what's the best glitch plugin, what's the best like music theory hacker, you know. But people forget, like, you got to look for like, what's the best saw wave, what's the best square wave, what's the best sine wave, what's the best triangle, what's the best Reese you can make, what's the best piano sound, what's the best horn sound, etc. You know, these kind of basic sounds, like, you have to get good at the basic stuff too. And Moog synths are just, they're the best at doing basic things, and you're always in every song gonna need a sine wave for a sub and like a super saw type sound, and like you just always need these sounds. So anyway, working with them is a fucking joy, man, because they sound good right out of the box, and then the more you process them, the better they sound. And really, like when you're processing them, it's more a matter of trying not to ruin the existing awesomeness of the sound, much more than it is like trying to make a sound that's mediocre into a good sound. Like when you start off with something good, you're mostly just focusing on how can I make a good thing better without wrecking it, rather than how can I make a crappy thing decent. You know, it's a whole different ballgame when you're producing. Anyway, this working with these sounds has really, really inspired me. And I'm finishing this track up tomorrow. My friend Ian's coming over to finish it, but just check out how these patches sound. These are pretty much all Moog Sounds from this exact library. Yeah, they're great sounds, man. Like, they're great sounds. They work great right out of the box. This is going to be my go-to library for, like, pretty much the rest of my music career. And, now it's yours for what I feel is a very, very fair price, and it's certainly cheaper than buying an $8,000 Moog one, that's for sure. All right, so thanks a lot for watching. Thanks to everyone who supports me. If you bought this and you're watching this because you bought this, you rock. Your support is empowering me to make more of this awesome stuff for everybody. I hope that you are as inspired and happy with these sounds as I am. And go out there, make lots of music, make the world a better place. I love you, and the world loves you and your music. So don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. You're awesome. Stay strong. I know it's not easy writing music. Hopefully this will make it a little bit easier. But go out there, make the best music you can. I can't wait to hear it. Lots of love.